welcome back to Nails Before Films. Today, I'm taking a break from Hollywood movies and reviewing something else. I'll be reviewing the live-action Golden Kamuy movie that came out earlier this year. I couldn't watch it in a theater because it was only available in Japan, but I finally got to see it after it hit Netflix in May. I'm a huge fan of Golden Kamuy. I've read all of the manga, both the ongoing weekly version and the volume versions. I've watched all of the anime, including the OVAs, and I've bought the mangas. Here are some of the extra stuff I got from the special edition of the final volume. These are the famous scene cards, which include the infamous onsen scene. This one is the finale celebratory drawing by the author, and this is a textured glossed board with the author's signature. I also have some merch. They collabed with Sanrio a while back. My sister got me this adorable Tsurumi Chewy plushie. She also got me this cute sleeping cat ear Ogata. Don't you think cat ears look so fitting on him? Anyway, my point is that I'm a huge fan of Golden Kamuy. It's quite possibly my top 3 manga of all time. Golden Kamuy has everything. There's action, comedy, food, culture, and history, with the side of excessive gayness. Seriously, Golden Kamuy is so gay. It's the only seinen manga I know where men are the ones giving fan service, not the woman. However, I didn't watch the live action right away when it came out. I held it off until this month. I'm sure a lot of anime fans know why I was so reluctant. Most anime adaptations are terrible, and I'm not even talking about the abominations made by Netflix for Western audiences, like Cowboy Bebop. I'm talking about the ones made by Japan for Japan. Even those tend to be terrible. Sometimes they mess up the story and make it nonsensical. Sometimes they change characters so much that they're no longer recognizable. And sometimes it just looks nothing like the original. For example, there's this amazing gambling manga called Usogui or Lie Eater. I absolutely love the manga, but unfortunately, there's no anime adaptation, only an animated special of the most popular arc. Because I really wanted to see more of Usogui, I made the mistake of watching the live-action movie, which was a distasteful disaster. Some of the characters were nothing like who they are in the original. They changed the games for the worst and made them so freaking boring. So I had very mixed feelings when I learned that Golden Kamuy was getting a live-action movie. On one hand, because Golden Kamuy is based on historical events and historical figures, the live action could be very interesting if done well. On the other, knowing how terrible live actions could be, I was extremely worried that they would butcher my baby. Therefore, I held off watching it for as long as I could, but since I love Golden Kamuy so much, I decided to pull up my big girl pants and watch it. And I'm happy to say that it is freaking awesome. For starters, the live action is extremely faithful to the original. The story, the characters, the aesthetic, everything is as close to the source material as possible. Let's talk about the story first. The live action of Golden Kamuy mainly goes over the first 20 chapters of the manga or the first 5 episodes of the anime. It's not a lot, which is why it worked. A lot of live action adaptations try to go over too many arcs of the original and end up rushing the story. The only significant change they made is combining the part where Hijikata gets his sword and the part where Sugimoto gets captured by Tsurumi Chewy. Hijikata getting his sword happens 2 arcs after Sugimoto getting captured, but the movie managed to blend these two seamlessly. Ultimately, it doesn't disrupt the narrative and the story still makes sense. The other changes they made are mostly related to the fights. For example, during the final fight on the sled, Nikaido and Ashiripa aren't there with Sugimoto in the original. Ashiripa only helps from afar to stop Tsurumi Chewy from catching up to Sugimoto, and Nikaido is never there to begin with. However, I'm okay with these changes because I understand that the sled fight is the big third act climax, so it makes sense that the movie would modify it to be more intense and thrilling. It doesn't change the overall story, and the fight itself is pretty amazing, so I'm perfectly fine with such changes. The only modification, or rather omission, that I don't like is after Sugimoto fights with the Nikaido twins, the movie makes it seem like Tsurumi Chui leaves him unguarded, which leads to the twins sneaking back in and gives Sugimoto the chance to escape. In the manga, Tsurumi Chui does have some men guarding Sugimoto after his fight with the Nikaidos, but they leave their posts when hearing the horses being startled and suspect that there are horse thieves. The horses are actually startled by the sound of Retara, so Ashiripa unknowingly helps get rid of the guards, which leads to the Nikaidos sneaking in to kill Sugimoto. This is a minor omission in the grand scheme of things, but I don't like it because it makes Tsurumi Chui seem like an idiot who leaves Sugimoto unguarded without any explanation. It's not a big deal, but because this film does such a good job of adapting the story, I expected them to be more thoughtful and avoid such issues. Anyway, besides the small issue I just mentioned, I think they did an excellent job adapting the story. When they do modify things, it's generally to make the fights more interesting, which is absolutely fine with me. Besides the story, they also do a good job with the visuals. They actually filmed in Hokkaido, and they built Ashiripa's tribe in a small Hokkaido town that still maintains Ainu culture. You can really tell how much they respect the culture. The crew actually went to Ainu workshops and made the costumes and tools by hand, the same way they were made by Ainu people. Another visual that I love about the live action is how good the CGI bear looks. One of the things that I hate about Golden Kamuy's anime is how terrible the bears look. The bears are a huge threat in Golden Kamuy, yet the way they are done in the anime is so underwhelming. I'm so happy that they get the bears right in the live action. That alone is a huge win for me. Just a side note, because I'm a woman of culture who watches Golden Kamuy, I would never ever choose bear over men. Another thing I love about the movie is how well they translate the humor into live action. Because of how exaggerated manga and anime can be, the humor rarely works in live action. I absolutely love the comedy aspect of Golden Kamuy, so I was really worried about how they would do it in live action. I already think some of the humor isn't as effective in the anime, so I was extremely concerned that the live action would be cringy when it comes to the comedy. Surprisingly, they actually managed to keep the humor without looking cringe as fudge. For example, Shiraishi's exaggerated movements don't look weird at all. Although it's a little excessive at times, overall it blends in with the movie well. Besides Shiraishi, when Sugimoto and Ashiripa are reluctant to eat things they're not used to, the weird faces they make are hilarious. I still think the manga is the funniest, but the live action did their best to preserve the comedic effect without looking cringe, with the help of the talented cast. The live action Golden Kamuy has an amazing cast. Almost everyone looks and acts like the characters. Sugimoto's actor Yamazaki Kento did a terrific job. Sugimoto is a very tough man, especially in battle, but at the same time, he's extremely soft inside. Yamazaki manages to embody both of these aspects of Sugimoto's character. It definitely helps that he's a veteran when it comes to acting in live-action anime. He plays the main characters in Alice in Borderland and the Kingdom film series, which are all highly praised live-action adaptations. Yamada Anna is also great as Ashiripa. Age-wise, she's much older than Ashiripa, but she fits right into the role. Although Ashiripa is a teenager, she's very independent, determined, and strong, and Yamada plays her perfectly. Not only does she look the part, but she also embodies Ashiripa's resolve and courage. Besides the two protagonists, most of the side characters are also great. Characters like Shiraishi, Hijikata, and Ogata all look and act like the characters. It certainly helps that some of the cast are fans of the original themselves. The only character I'm slightly disappointed in is Ushiyama. The actor just doesn't look as strong and bulky. He even looks smaller than Hijikata in some shots. Besides his size, the actor does look like Ushiyama, but because of how powerful he is in the original, I can't help but feel a bit disappointed. I understand that it's especially difficult to cast huge muscular characters, so it's still acceptable. I feel like they tried. Lastly, I'm going to talk about what, or rather who, I care about the most in Golden Kamuy. No matter how good everything else is, if they don't get this character right, I could never ever like the live action. I'm of course talking about Tsurumi Chewy. I love Tsurumi Chewy so much. He's my top 3 villain across all media of all time. He's just so complex, interesting, and charismatic. He's unhinged, manipulative, and cruel, but you can understand why so many people follow him, and I think he really cares about his comrades. He's just so clever, capable, and unpredictable. I love him so much. Even though he's the villain, you can understand where he's coming from. Honestly, what he's trying to do is quite noble and selfless. Anyway, because I love Tsurumi Chewy so much, I could never ever like the live action if they get him wrong. I'm so relieved and happy to say that Tsurumi Chewy is perfect in the live action. Tamaki Hiroshi is so amazing as Tsurumi Chewy. Not only does he look the part with the help of the special effect makeup, but he also has the chaotic charisma of Tsurumi Chewy. His acting is also on point. He gets Tsurumi Chewy's weird little movements right without looking cringe, and he manages to act lunatic and sharp at the same time. Just the way Tsurumi Chewy is. It's freaking amazing. That alone is enough for me to consider the live action as a win. I just love Tsurumi Chewy that much. As much as I just praised the Golden Kamuy live action, I admit that I'm pretty biased because I'm coming from a fan's perspective. However, I'm not oblivious to the flaws of the movie. First and foremost, this live action is not very friendly to audiences who know nothing about Golden Kamuy. They don't explain many things and rely on the audience already having seen the anime or read the manga. For example, they don't explain how much the gold is worth in today's currency, so the audience doesn't really understand how much money is at stake, which undermines the tension. Also, they expect you to know the characters already, so they don't really give you their background. For example, they don't explain Shiraishi's background, so you don't really understand just how good he is at escaping. They also don't tell you how he can throw up a razor and a bullet, so people who know nothing about Golden Kamuy might think that it's just convenient for the plot. Another character who suffers from insufficient explanation is Ushiyama. The movie tells you nothing about him, so he's probably just a random guy for normies. Ushiyama is possibly the strongest character in Golden Kamuy. The guy can fight a bear with his bare hands. Pun not intended. At least that the audience know he's a master of judo, so that people would understand why Hijikata wants to enlist his help. All of the issues I just mentioned, whether it's the worth of the gold or Shiraishi and Ushiyama's characters, can all be explained in a few lines by the narrator. So I don't understand why they didn't do that. They got Ogata's voice actor to narrate this movie for crying out loud. Why not use him more? Besides the lack of explanations, the movie as a whole is a bit slow. As a fan of Golden Kamuy, I don't conceive this as a huge issue because I know it's following the original story and I already know what would happen next. However, normie audiences probably think the pacing is way too slow and perceive some parts of the film to be boring. It doesn't help that some of the line deliveries from the two protagonists are a bit flat and or too fast. As much as I like the casting of Yamazaki and Yamada, some of their conversations are really dry. I don't think the dialogues are the issue because the same lines sound more lively in the anime. But the way they are delivered in the live action sometimes sounds like they are just reading off the script. I don't think it's the actors that are the problem because both Yamazaki and Yamada show that they are capable of energetic performances. So maybe they deliberately do it this way because it's a live action, but I would rather they be a bit more dramatic than being so flat. That's basically my thoughts on the live action of Golden Kamuy. It's obvious that the target audience of the film is fans of the manga or the anime, and I think that's perfectly fine. So many live action mess things up to pander to normies, but ends up pissing off the fans and failing to capture new audiences. As a fan, I would rather an adaptation be a bit boring because it's trying to stay faithful to the original. I've seen so many examples of live actions trying to quote-unquote improve the source material by adding or modifying things, but ending up producing an abomination. So I'm very happy with how Golden Kamuy turned out to be, but I do think they can explain some things better to make it more accessible to new audiences. And to be honest, I think Golden Kamuy will work better as a TV series because of how short the beginning arcs are. I feel like the Karafuto arc would be much more fitting to be adapted into a film. It's quite self contained and much longer. You would also get an overarching story of Sugimoto trying to reunite with Ashiripa. But like I said, from a fan's perspective, I think they did a great job adapting the starting chapters into a film. I'm certainly looking forward to the upcoming TV series, which would go into the main characters' encounters with some of the prisoners. Hope you guys liked my review and nails. Because of how important food is in Golden Kamuy, I did 3D nails of the foods that appear in the movie. This is Sugimoto's miso, this is chitatapu, this is the otter head, and Tsurumi Chewy's dango. Some of the colors aren't as accurate, but I think they're still recognizable. I originally wanted to do 3D for the logo as well, but gold foil turned out to be really hard to control, which was why I switched to an encapsulated dimensional nail, and I'm pretty happy with the result. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, comment, share, do what you want. Keep nailing it, and hinna, people.